Man inherits house from grandparents, then finds this chest in backyard. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. When Mark Johansen's grandparents passed away within months of each other, he was surprised to learn he'd inherited their house in rural Vermont. The old clapboard home sat on an acre of overgrown land, framed by maple trees and a rusting fence. It hadn't seen visitors in years, and the attic still smelled like cedar and dust. Mark had fond memories of the Ressimers playing in the woods, hot cocoa by the fireplace, and Grandpa Carl's stories about the good old days. But after high school, life moved on. He hadn't visited much since. Now, at 32 and tired of city rent, the idea of restoring the place felt oddly comforting. He arrived with little more than a duffel bag, toolbox, and his loyal Labrador, Murphy. The house creaked and groaned as he walked through it, and the floorboards carried the echoes of the past. It needed work-new wiring, fresh paint, and probably a new roof, but the bones were good. He rolled up his sleeves and got started. Each day was a rhythm of repairs and small victories. A leaky pipe fixed here, a room cleared of old furniture there. At night, Mark would light a fire and go through the boxes his grandmother had labeled in her neat cursive, kitchen keepsakes, Carl's tools, and family photos. He found old Polaroids, a few love letters, and recipes written on index cards smudged with flour. One afternoon, after a heavy rain, Mark noticed something odd in the backyard. The corner near the large oak had sunk slightly, exposing a patch of different colored soil. He remembered his grandfather's warnings as a kid. "Don't dig there, the roots run deep." But the tree had died long ago, and curiosity got the better of him. He grabbed a shovel and began digging. The soil was damp but loose, almost as if it had been disturbed before. Murphy lay nearby, panting in the spring sun, occasionally glancing over as if to ask what all the fuss was about. Mark expected to find an old root or maybe some forgotten tool. What he didn't expect was the clink of metal. He dropped to his knees and brushed away the dirt with his hands. A corner of something boxy revealed itself rusted but intact. The edges held together with rivets. It looked like a chest, sunken and forgotten. He kept digging until the entire object was unearthed. It was heavy, caked in mud, and had no visible lock, just two large corroded latches. For a moment, he sat back and stared. It didn't feel like treasure hunting, it felt like stumbling into a memory. Something about the chest felt familiar, though he couldn't say why. With some effort, he pulled it from the hole and dragged it onto the back porch. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he wiped it clean, noting the chipped green paint and worn corners. It was built to last, sturdy in a way modern things aren't. That night, he stared at it from across the room, a bottle of beer in one hand and an odd nervousness in his chest. What could it hold after all these years? Next morning, he put on gloves and pried the latches open. They creaked with resistance, but eventually gave way. He slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a mix of items wrapped in cloth, each layered with care. On top was a wool blanket, faded but clean. Beneath it, a collection of notebooks tied with twine, some loose papers, and a small wooden box no bigger than a shoebox. At first glance, there was no treasure, no gold coins or lost heirlooms, just everyday things, or so it seemed. He opened one of the notebooks. It was written in his grandfather's hand, the same cursive he'd seen on basement labels. But these weren't journal entries or to-do lists. They were stories, paragraphs upon paragraphs of memories, often starting with a date. One began, October 5, 1947, I met Anna at the harvest dance. She wore red shoes. Mark spent the next hour flipping through the notebooks, each one revealing a part of a life he never fully knew. There were tales of heartbreak, resilience, and deep joy. Some were lighthearted fishing trips gone wrong or road trips to nowhere. Others were heavier losing a job, a miscarriage, health scares. It was the rawness that surprised him most. Carl had always been steady, strong, and a bit reserved, but these pages revealed a man of great depth, hopeful, vulnerable, and fiercely in love with his wife. In the small wooden box, Mark found a silver locket with his grandmother's initials engraved inside. Next to it, a folded letter dated 1962. The letter was addressed to our future. The handwriting belonged to Anna. She wrote about her dreams for their children, the fears they held after Carl's injury in the mill, and how they hoped their home would remain in the family. "If someone finds this," it ended, "know that this house was our heart, and we built it with love." Mark sat there for a long time. The morning sun had turned to afternoon haze. He hadn't cried in years, not even at the funeral, but here he was, a grown man, holding the life stories of two people who shaped him in ways he hadn't fully realized. Over the next few days, Mark read every page. He found recipes Anna had invented, complete with scribbled adjustments like, "Too much nutmeg, try again." There were sketches of furniture Carl had planned to build, and letters they'd never sent them to friends, others just to each other. He felt like he was living with them again, not just in their house but in their thoughts. It was as if they had prepared this moment, preserved their essence in a chest, waiting patiently until he was ready to receive it. As spring gave way to summer, Mark began restoring not just the house but the garden. He planted marigolds along the walkway, like Anna had. He repaired the porch swing, replacing the wood slats with ones Carl had measured but never used. Murphy would watch from the grass, tail wagging, as Mark worked with purpose. He turned one of the upstairs rooms into a study. The notebooks, now bound in leather and organized by date, sat on a shelf near the window. He had the letter and the locket framed together with a small plaque beneath, "For the future." Neighbors began to stop by. Some had known his grandparents, others were new. They shared stories how Carl helped repair fences without asking for payment, how Anna made the best apple pie in the county. One elderly man recounted how Carl once pulled him out of a frozen lake when they were teens. "He never told anyone," the man said, eyes misting, "just said, 'Let's not make a fuss.'" It became clear that the couple hadn't just built a house, they had built a legacy, one of kindness, resilience, and quiet strength. And through that chest, they had passed it on. More than a year passed, and Mark found himself at peace in a way he hadn't expected. He started writing again, something he'd given up years ago, not for publication, just for himself. Sometimes he'd read aloud passages from Carl's stories or bake one of Anna's old recipes, imagining her smile as he got the crust just right. One warm August evening, while clearing a corner of the attic for insulation, Mark found something he'd missed before – a floorboard slightly raised. Beneath it, a shallow compartment with a single envelope inside. It was yellowed and brittle, sealed with red wax. He opened it carefully. Inside was a note, brief and to the point, in Carl's hand. "Mark, if you're reading this, it means you found the chest. I knew you would. You always had that stubborn curiosity. Everything in there is yours, just as this home is. But know this, the real treasure isn't what you find, it's what you build." Grandpa. Mark closed the envelope and pressed it to his chest. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel lost. He felt found.